Welcome to the Discus Video Masterclass. My name is Coach Joe Maxwell with College Throwers Academy, and in this video course, I'm going to teach you guys everything that you need to know about throwing the discus. This is going to be a perfect course if you're just learning the event. Even if you're more advanced, I guarantee you're going to learn some new features that is going to allow you to throw farther. We're filming in a very special location today. These are the discus and shot put circles that I built with my dad when I was about 13 years old. In high school, we didn't have anywhere else to throw nearby, so we built these circles, and they've given me over the years a great place to train and refine my discus technique. As far as the course, we're going to start with a warm-up. We'll take you through a full warm-up all the way through a drill progression, some common mistakes and corrections that you can make in your technique, and a few other insider tips and tricks that I've learned throwing the discus. I threw at the University of Tennessee. I was a 57-meter discus thrower and a 20-meter shot putter, a couple times All-American and an SEC champion as well. And now I coach to give more young throwers the same opportunity that I had. So before we get to throwing, we need to go through a full warm-up. We'll take you through that next, and then we'll get in the circle and we'll start taking some throws. So before we get in the ring and start throwing the discus, we need to go through a full warm-up routine. Having a good warm-up routine is important for a number of reasons. Number one, it's going to drastically reduce the risk of injury, which is very important. You can't train if you're hurt. But besides that, it's just important to get into a routine with your training. So having a consistent warm-up routine. Throwing is something that's very routine oriented. So if you can get on something consistent, that is going to help you to get into a rhythm better and ultimately perform more consistently. So as far as the warm-up, a good first thing to do is to just work on any little injuries that you've maybe had in the past. So for me, I've had a lot of lower back issues. So I would take a lot of time to go through my lower back protocol that physical therapists had given me. So if you have a shoulder issue, if you have a chest issue, anything that's kind of causing you a little bit of pain, it can be a good idea to go through some protocols for that first. Once you've done that, you want to do some stretching. So we want to focus on the hips, the hamstrings, and the pecs, especially in discus, because there's a lot of stretch across the chest. Those are going to be the injuries or the areas most at risk of injury, so we want to target those. Once we've gone through some stretching, we want to get into some more dynamic movements. So the best movements you can do are just some sprint drills. So some A skips, high knees, B skips, things like that. You can go do a couple sets of about 15 meters just to kind of get some blood flowing, feeling a little more athletic, and getting moving. Once we've gone through those, our heart rate should be up a little bit more, and we should be ready to come into the circle and start with our first drill progression and start taking some throws. But before we do that, there's going to be a couple foundational principles that I want to cover that is ultimately going to help you in the long run before we actually start taking some throws. So before we get in the ring to throw, I want to explain rim weights in the discus. This is a term you've probably heard. It likely hasn't been explained properly to you, but it is an important concept to understand. So right here, I have an 85% rim weight discus. And what that means is 85% of the total weight of this implement is in the rim of the implement, and then the remaining 15% is in the middle. So more advanced throwers generally will throw a higher rim weight discus. So this is a relatively high rim weight. They do go all the way up to about 93% and all the way down to 65 or 70%. You have to be a more advanced thrower to be able to utilize that extra weight in the rim to your advantage, because it can generate more momentum and ultimately go farther if you have enough power off your finger to spin it hard enough to utilize that weight. But if you're throwing a discus that's too advanced for you, it's actually going to hurt your distance. So to give you guys some reference, if you're brand new to the sport, you want the lowest rim weight you could possibly find. So at most equipment stores, that's going to be about 65 to 70%, like I said. If you're more intermediate, so intermediate meaning say over 130 feet at the high school level, you want to be throwing an 80, maybe an 85% rim weight. And you want to save the 90+% rim weight discuses for when you're more advanced, meaning throwing over 180 feet at the high school level. So it's one of those details that you maybe don't think about, but it is very important to have an understanding of before you actually purchase some implements and start throwing. So the last thing we need to cover before we actually start taking some throws is grip mechanics on the discus, how to release it properly, and flying the discus well. So let's talk about grip first. So when I'm gripping the discus, I want my pointer finger, I want to draw a line down the middle of the implement with my pointer finger, and then wrap the first digit, the first joint of my finger around the rim of the discus. Fingers evenly spaced, palm is flat on the discus, thumb is flat on the discus, and then what I'm going to do is, when I go to release it, it's going to be spun off of this pointer finger here. So I want to spin it as hard and as fast as I can off of that pointer finger. A common mistake, I see the discus sometimes coming off of the middle finger at the high school level. That won't result in the best possible flight. So you definitely always want it to be coming off the middle finger. So this is the best grip when you're just starting out. Now there is an alternate grip that you can use. Again, if you're a little bit more advanced, say over 130, 140 feet, you can put your two fingers together, your pointer and middle finger together, same placement, and then you just wrap your fingers around. This is a grip that I did use at some points in my career. It can give you more distance because you have a more solid base to spin the discus off of. It's still coming off of the pointer finger, but you have a little bit more behind it just with that middle finger. So if you're starting out, just use the traditional even grip. If you're a little more advanced, you can play around with the alternate grip as well. But regardless, we want it coming off of that middle finger. So the next thing I want to talk about is flying the discus. So common overlooked aspect of the event, but one of the best things you can do to get the best returns on your distance is actually learn how to fly the discus properly. So discus, the trajectory is actually going to be a little bit lower than in the shot ideally. So ideal shot put angle of attack on release is going to be 38 to 40 degrees in that range. Discus is going to be a little bit lower, so it's in the 35 to 37 degree range. So it's pretty flat, right? And what you're going to want is, as it comes out of your hand, like you'll see today on my better throws for right-handed throwers, the right side of the discus is going to be slightly pointed down as it comes out. And then with the wind kind of rushing underneath it, it will naturally flatten out through the flight, and then the left hip may even slightly lean down as it goes to land. That orientation for the flight is going to be ideal to get the most distance. We also want it to be smooth, right? So you'll see some throws, they'll kind of flutter around. We want it to be smooth coming off of the finger, a nice clean spin, so that you can't even tell that it's spinning in the air, right? It just looks like a flying saucer, like a UFO out there. And that will allow us to get the most distance. It's probably worth talking about wind as well and how that can affect the discus. Again, wind is not something that you're going to have control over, but it is something that's good to be aware of. It's a little counterintuitive too. In the discus, a headwind, so we're going to be throwing in this direction today. If I had it's pretty calm today, but if I had a wind coming in this way, like towards me, that's actually good for the discus. You actually want a mild headwind. That can actually give the discus some more lift, right? It'll catch air underneath it and give it some more lift, which can result in 4 to 5 meters more distance than you would get on a calm day. To contrast, if you have a wind behind you, like pushing out towards the sector, a lot of times that will limit distance somewhat. So when I was first starting out in high school, I didn't have an understanding of how wind affected things. And when I'd have the tailwind, I would go out and wonder, why are my distances so much worse? And I thought it was something that I was doing. But in contrast, it was just, the weather having an effect on my throw. So again, not something we can control, but that's just something to be aware of. If you're throwing real far, chances are you're getting a headwind coming in. If your distance just isn't coming quite as easily, there's probably a tailwind coming in. So those are some good foundations. We've discussed grip and flight. Now it's time to get into the ring and actually start taking some throws. Okay, so we're warmed up. We're ready to start taking some throws. Now there's a couple options here. You can jump right into the ring and go right into your stand throws, but I'm gonna show you a drill. It's basically one drill progression before a stand throw that can help you get warmed up a little bit more, but most importantly, give you some good practice reps on flying the discus well and getting a good clean spin off of that pointer finger. So we're gonna go to the front of the ring. I call these front-on throws. Some guys will call them discus picking as well. So I'm standing to the sector, face to the sector, feet are shoulder width, and all I'm gonna do is I'm just leaning back and I'm gonna flick the discus out into the sector. I'm not going for distance on these whatsoever. All I'm trying to do is get a good clean spin off of my pointer finger. So we'll take 3 here. We got 3 discuses, and I'll aim to improve throughout the 3. These are my first throws of the day. So grip it just how I talked about, and then good clean spin off the pointer finger. So again, they're not going very far. That's maybe 25, 30 meters, but the goal is not distance on these. The goal is to just loosen up and feel a good flick off that finger. So let's take another one. So there, a little bit of a cleaner flight on that one. So that's what I like to see, is just the flights improving as I go through. And that's another thing that you will find is as you get more experience in the discus, you will develop a better natural feel for the flight. So I've taken so many thousands and thousands of throws that I know now, right when a discus comes off my finger, if it's gonna be a good flight or not. And that's something that comes with time. So let's take one more front on here. So not bad. You see, I lost that one a little bit early. And that's the goal, especially with these, is we want a good clean flight, but we do want to line it up down the middle too. So then we're reinforcing good movement patterns that will help us when we actually get into the ring and start taking some full throws. Okay, so we've taken our front-on throws. So I'm feeling good about the release. I'm getting some good flights. Now it's time to move into our first drill progression in the discus, which is going to be the stand throw. So we'll show you the footwork first. If you're a rotational shot putter, you're gonna notice there is a lot of similarities between the positioning and rotational shot and discus. There are a few key differences that we will point out. So in the stand throw, we want the foot slightly past center, because again, in rotational shot, it'll usually be on center, but we're in a bigger ring here. It's a little bit more than a foot wider in diameter. It's 8 foot 2 inches in diameter compared to a 7-foot circle. So we want the right foot just past center, maybe about 8 inches past center. I'm on the ball of the foot. I have the majority of my weight on my right leg, and then my left leg is behind. There is a heel-toe relationship. So my right heel is in line with my left toe, which is really important because that gives me enough space to rotate my right hip all the way through. If I have my left over here, if they're parallel, I can't rotate my right side as much as I'd like because my left side's in the way. So we need to clear the left, have it over here to allow the right hip to work all the way through. So on a stand throw, we're gonna come back. We come back with a wind with the discus, and then I want to work the ground first with the hips and then line it up with the upper body, ideally get them right down the middle, and then just finish it off that pointer finger. So we haven't talked about chalk yet. I think that would be worth mentioning. Most discus throwers will use chalk, maybe not everyone. I find it is easy to overuse chalk, specifically in discus. In shot, it's pretty hard to use too much chalk, like it's just different with the grip. In discus, you don't want to overuse chalk. So what I've found most effective is just a slight amount on the tips of the fingers, maybe a little bit on the palm here. So you see, I'm barely using any. What I've found is if you use too much chalk in the discus, it can actually cause the implement to slip out of your hand. Like if you have a whole bunch of loose powdery discus or powdery chalk on your fingers rather, it can actually hurt you more than help you. So we have a little bit of chalk, and let's get set for our first throw. So again, I'll do a setup. In discus, I'm visualizing lining one up right down the middle. Get set in our power position and take our first throw. So pretty decent start. You saw that one went a little higher than I would have liked, so that's okay. We just want to try to make small corrections from throw to throw. So I'll try to get this trajectory down a little bit lower on this one to get a little bit more distance. So a little bit better on that one, a little bit more distance. I still could get it down slightly more. And again, that's all you want to do. Is not every throw is going to be perfect, especially in the discus, but we just want to get a little bit closer to perfection every time. So let's see if I can get this trajectory down a little bit more even. So there, that's definitely my best one yet. Good clean flight on that one. That's the stand throw. You'd want to take maybe 6 to 8 of those, and then we'd be ready to move on to the next drill progression, the half turn, which we're going to cover next. So our next drill progression in the discus is going to be the half turn. So again, we'll show you the footwork, and then we'll take some throws here leading into our full throw. So the half turn, again, similar to the rotational shot, we want to set up with the right foot forward, pretty well right on the middle of the ring, and then the left foot somewhat behind us. It's not quite all the way in the back of the ring. Like if you did that, you'd kind of be stretched too far. So we want to move that foot a little closer in, say, 16 inches off from the back of the ring. And then what I'm doing is transferring weight to the right side, rotating with the lower body while bringing the left leg around and landing it in the front into our power position. So it's a pretty simple movement. You're just going from here to the stand throw position. So here, stand throw, and then finish. So let's take a couple half turns. Again, a little bit of chalk on the hand. Visualizing that throw right down the middle with good flight, and then we'll set up and go. So decent start. I would have preferred to stay on the ground a little bit longer on that right side. So we'll try to correct that on this one. You'll notice on that throw, I did just fall off that right foot. It's a little bit of a wet morning today, so the ring's a little bit slick, but we'll just try to make a correction on that. So that was quite a bit better. You saw I stood on that right foot more and generated some more power. So this one, we'll just try to replicate what I did on the last one. Maybe get the trajectory down slightly. So a little bit higher than I would have liked on that one. Again, you guys are seeing a live practice here, but those are some pretty solid throws. I'm happy with the positions that I felt on that one, and I'm ready to move on to the next drill progression. So the next drill progression in our discus series is going to be the walkthrough after we've completed our half turns. So again, we'll show you the setup for that one. Got a towel out the back of the ring here. It's just a little bit of a wet, muddy day, so keeping the bottom of my shoe clean. But we're basically setting up facing dead down the middle of the sector. I have my left foot in the back of the ring. I'm on the ball of the foot here. And I have my right foot, again, about 16 to 18 inches behind the back of the ring. So it's basically just a linear step into the half turn position that we just covered, and then a half turn into a full. So it's one progression in between a half turn and a full throw. So let's pick up the discus, we will chalk up, and then we'll take a few half turns here leading into our full throws. So the key with these is, as I'm stepping into the ring, I don't want to yank my upper body off and over rotate. I want to ideally maintain contact with the sector with my eyes until I get to the middle. So I actually want minimal movement with my upper body until I actually step into the half turn position. It can be a tendency as you step in to want to pull off and stop and start rotating, but we actually want to take it as a linear movement until we get to the half turn. So we'll take a walk through here. So decent start, bit of a wobbly flight there. So I want to clean that up and just get a little more fluidity through the movement and a better flight. So much better flight on that one, a little bit more distance too. And then we'll take one more. So pretty good flight on that one. I didn't stay on the right foot as long as I would have liked, but again, bit of a wet, slippery day today. So we'll keep that in mind and just try to work the ground a little bit longer as we move into our full throws on the next progression. So now we've gone through the walkthroughs, it's time to take our first few full throws. We're just gonna be doing these off a non-reverse, so we're not gonna be switching the feet at the end. We'll explain that in a little bit, just the difference between a non and a reverse throw, but we always start with the non-reverses. So we're basically going to combine all the movements that we've done thus far, but we're changing the starting position and we're adding one piece to the front just to have a little bit more time to accelerate the implement. So I'm going back of the ring, feet shoulder width. I'm sitting, in about a quarter squat position. And then my goal as I come out the back is I'm rotating out, I'm stepping into my half turn, and then half turn to stand throw, and stand throw to finish. So that's where you see the advantage of doing these progressions, is they're all included in the full throw. Now the extra movement we're adding onto the full is in the back. There's a couple things I want to think about on this. So I want to work left. So I want to work left with this arm, get my sweep leg out nice and wide as I bring this leg out before it cuts into the middle. The other thing I want to do is create some separation in the throw. So separation, if you don't know what it is, very simply, it's just distance between where the implement is and where my right hip is. So I want to get my right hip as far in front of the implement as I can, as early as I can, to establish some good separation, some good stretch across the chest that I can maintain through the throw until the stand throw. I still have the stretch here, and then finish off the throw. So discus and shot, but especially in discus, we want to utilize the natural stretchiness in our muscles to allow us to get some more distance. The other thing I'll say with this, just philosophy as we get into throwing the full throws, you don't want to try and kill it and set the world record on your first throw, right? We want to ease into these, right? So I'm going to take my first throw or two at about 50 to 60%, and then gradually increase the effort and gradually make small technical corrections as I've been doing through these drill progressions. So let's pick up a discus. We'll get a little chalk on, and then we'll take our first non-reverse here. So again, the setup, I like to enter from the back of the ring, and I'm visualizing lining up a throw right down the middle, right? I don't want to lose it early. I don't want it coming out late. I'm trying to nail it right down the middle. So I'm visualizing the whole time. Come to the front, and then I'm going to set up here. So again, not trying to kill this one, just getting a good early effort to build on. So that's a very nice start. That's probably my best throw of the session. Stayed on the ground pretty well. Good, clean delivery. The reason why that one went well was I wasn't trying too hard, right? Again, it was a 50 or 60% effort. If I'd gone in and tried to destroy that throw, I probably would have missed the flight and it wouldn't have gone nearly as far. So that's a really good one to build on. Let's take another throw here. So again, I'm gonna do my full setup. This is how I would set it up in competition as well. I also like that last throw was lined up right down the middle too. It shows the timing is in a good place. So we'll just try to duplicate that, turn it up a little bit. Yeah, so that's actually probably another 3 to 5 meters on my first throw. So I like the positions, but my intensity was a little bit higher. So that's why I went a little farther. But what I'm doing a good job of, like I mentioned, is creating stretch, creating separation out the back. So I'm getting the hip in front and then I'm maintaining that. And then I have all this room to finish the discus at the front. Another concept I actually do want to touch on, we haven't talked about it yet, is the block in the front of the ring. So I see a lot of athletes not utilizing the block as well as they should be. The block, again, it's very simple concept like separation. In the front, when we land the left side, I actually want to stop movement with the left side, even tuck this arm close to my side. I'm strong on that foot, and then I'm turning my right side into the left side. So a good way to think about the block is like a door. So on the left side, you have the hinge side, it doesn't move, right? But then on the handle side, we actually slam the handle side into the door frame, right? If we're slamming a door. So we need that left side to be stationary so that we can slam the right side into the left side. So that's another concept to think about, because when we generate separation, when we have stretch, I need a strong left side to utilize that stretch, right? Because if my left side keeps rotating, I'm just gonna lose the discus early, or I'm gonna lose the discus late. So I need stretch, plant the left side, strong block, and I'm almost like pulling with my left side to bring the right side all the way around. So that's block mechanics. You wanna make sure you're having a strong block as well to utilize all the separation that we've built up. So let's see, we'll take one more, see if I can build upon the good rhythm that I've found here. So another solid throw. I lost that one a little bit early. It was still a good, good quality throw, probably an 8 out of 10 quality. But again, just losing the foot a little bit off the circle. I'm gonna blame it on the wet conditions today. Definitely not me. But in a perfect world, we actually want to rotate that foot all the way around and keep it on the ground and land on balance. So that's what we're shooting for. In the next video, we'll talk about how to do the reverse, and then we'll move into our full throw, which is going to be the full throw with the reverse. Before we move into our final drill progression, which is going to be a full throw with a reverse, I want to take a minute to explain the difference and kind of the pros and cons between a non-reverse and a reverse. So first of all, the non-reverse is what you've seen me doing thus far on all these throws, where I just throw and then I just stick the feet at the end. So I don't switch the feet. There's no additional movement after the discus is released. And that is what you're gonna want for most of your drill progressions. You do wanna take some fulls off a non-reverse, because the non-reverse is helpful. It really teaches you to work the ground and to stay on the ground, right? The reverse can kind of teach you some bad habits that we'll get into in a bit. It is advantageous as well, but we do want to get good at taking non-reverses, just sticking the feet and staying on balance. Now a reverse, which we're gonna do in the next video, we're switching the left foot for the right foot and then bringing it back into the ring. So the reverse is very helpful because it allows you to apply more force to the implement while you still stay in the ring, right? Because we don't want to foul. So again, most world-class throwers in a competition will take their full throws off a reverse. There are a few guys where their full throw is they just stick it at the front with a non. Most throwers will utilize the reverse, and it can be the hardest part of the throw to actually learn. So let's break down the footwork a little bit so you can see exactly what we're doing. So we're in the stand throw. I'm turning, I want to work the ground, but then I want to, again, switch my left foot for my right foot. So I'm going to bring the right around, counterbalance with the left so that I don't fall out of the ring. So this is the first move. And then I need to do one more turn to cycle it and bring it into the ring. So we're going to show you a few drill progressions that can help you in learning the reverse. So we want to break it down into pieces, right? Because it can be a little overwhelming to think about doing that full movement if you've never done it before. So we want to start the first drill progression. We're just going to rotate 90 degrees. We're going to start feet shoulder width. And then I'm going to, sit in about a quarter squat, hands on the hips. And I'm just going to do a jump, and I'm going to turn 90 degrees towards my left. So here, turn and land. So it's a pretty easy drill. So we're going to go here, turn and land. So it's just starting to teach me, again, that movement of switching the left for the right. So that's the first drill progression. So we want to do that for a week or two until you get confident in that movement. And then you can try the second drill progression where we're actually going to get into a stand throw position. And I'm going to rotate and switch the feet, counterbalance with the left and stay on balance. And then just hold it there. So we won't do the cycle part of it. So again, pretty simple drill, just back, counterbalance. So we'll do a few more reps here. Gonna go here, counterbalance. And you will see even professional throwers will move through these type of drill progressions during the off season when they're working on fundamentals. So it's always good to work on these things. Counterbalance, we'll take one more. Good, so we're just going for balance, pretty simple movement. And then the last drill progression, after we're comfortable with that, we want to get in our counterbalance position, and then it's just one more turn. So I'm basically flipping, I want the inside of my right foot to be against the circle, against the end of the circle right now, right? So right now it's the outside. So I want to just flip the foot and then cycle it and bring it back into the ring. So you can start from the ending position of the last drill, just flip the foot, bring it back into the ring. Let's do one more. And then we can put it all together. So stand throw position, switch the feet, counterbalance the left, one more turn, cycle it with the right foot and bring it back in. Switch, cycle, save. Let's do one, get this one a little cleaner here. Switch, cycle, save. Good, on balance. Let's do one more. Switch, cycle, save. So that is our reverse. If you don't know the reverse, you definitely want to take at least a couple weeks to go through these drill progressions to teach yourself how to do it correctly. In our next progression, which is going to be our last throw, we're going to take some full throws off a reverse where we're switching the feet, and then we'll wrap up with a few more details. Okay, so we're ready to move into our last drill progression, which is going to be the full throw with the reverse. So same movement that we did before, except we're going to add that reverse movement where we switch the feet at the end to the end of the non-reverse throws that we were doing earlier. So again, I'm not trying to kill the first couple. I'm just trying to get into a good rhythm, good flights, line up the throw down the middle so that I have something to build off of for the next one. So full setup, visualizing right down the middle, visualizing that perfect flight that I want to hit. Then we'll take a throw. So pretty good start. Lost that one a little early. It still would have been within the sector, but I just want to take my time, work the hips, and bring it all the way around so that I'm getting the full power, because if we're losing throws down the right sector, we are losing some power. So we're losing a little bit of distance. So again, trying to think right down the middle and a perfect flight. So quite a bit better on that one. You saw I lined it up better down the middle and got a fair bit more distance on that one too. So we'll just try to build on that one on our third throw here. So again, pretty smooth flight. Again, lost it slightly early, but again, pretty good quality throw, an 8 out of 10 throw, and that will give me something to build off of for the rest of the session. So we've moved through all the drill progressions. You've seen the demonstrations. For the last part of this course, we're gonna talk about a few more tips and tricks, you know, beyond what we're actually doing in the circle that can help you throw farther and improve your rankings in the discus. Okay, so we've covered the fundamentals of how to go through a practice and how to take some throws. In this section, I want to cover some common mistakes that I see throwers making and some drills and some concepts that you can think about to correct those mistakes. So first mistake, very simple, we touched on it earlier, but it's just a wobbly flight, right? So it comes out of your hand and it's just wobbling around and clearly losing distance, right? You saw on a few of my throws, the flights weren't totally smooth. If that's happening to you frequently, there's probably an issue with your grip or your release mechanics. So make sure, take some time, go back and review the grip video that we discussed earlier. Make sure your grip mechanics are correct and make sure you're spinning it off of the pointer finger, not your middle finger, right? The biggest cause of a incorrect flight is when the discus comes off the middle finger. So we need to make sure we're spinning it off of that pointer finger. That's the last thing that should touch the discus. So if you're having problems with that, there's a few drills that we can do to correct that. So I'll show you. The first one, we're just gonna spin the discus straight up in the air off that pointer finger. So it's a very easy drill. You'll see professionals will do this as well. So again, you can hit some easy reps, like we just spin it off and then it's just coming off of that outside part of the pointer finger. So you can start a session by doing some of these. So we'll do one more, just spin it. So you can do like 10 to 20 of those in a session. We can do a similar drill to that. I call this a discus bowling drill. Ideally, you'll want a bit of a bigger open field, but we can do a demonstration here. So all I'm gonna do is, I'm going to roll it off my finger and roll it onto the grass, right? So again, it's similar to what we were doing, tossing it in the air, but we're just focused on it coming off nicely off of that finger. So you don't have to throw it real hard. We're just trying to ease it off that finger. So there, we got a nice smooth roll of the discus. The last thing that you can work on, and we'll take one more of these, we already covered this earlier, but the front-on throws, the discus picking that I talked about earlier, is a great drill to isolate that flick off the finger and focus on the flight. So if I'm, at times in my career when I was having issues with my flight, I would take extra time in the sessions to take extra reps, maybe 20, maybe even 30 reps of the front-on throws just to really isolate the flight. So the flight and the flick off that finger. So we'll just take one more here. So really, still a little bit of a flutter there, but a pretty solid flight. The only thing I'm thinking about with those is getting that flick off my finger. I'm not thinking about power positions or sweep leg or anything like that. And when you're making technical corrections, that's what you'll find is you want to pursue drills that isolate the change you're trying to make. So then that way you're not worried about a bunch of other things going on in the ring. You're just focused on what's actually going to improve and correct the mistake that you're making. So the next mistake that I see being made very commonly, it's a mistake that I certainly made when I was in high school, is losing the throw down the right sector. So releasing it too early and throwing it, you know, down the right sector or slightly outside of the right sector. The problem with that is if it goes outside the sector, it's a foul. Even if you do keep it in the ring, if it's going far right, like I touched on earlier, you're losing a lot of power, right? Because in the discus, we want all our forces aligned. So when I'm coming out of the back, I want to aim my body down the middle of the ring, boom, boom. And then I want the path of the discus to also follow that same line. If I have my body going one way and the discus going another way, I'm losing force in between those two lines. So we want everything lined up. So a lot of times I will see athletes as they move up in weights. So say when you move to a 1K to a 1.6, and when you move to a 1.6 to the collegiate 2K discus, that can really affect the timing. For some reason, a heavier discus prompts us to release it earlier. And it's really a mental shift that you have to think about. It's a timing issue, right? So it's you're going with the upper body a little too early and you're not working the legs enough. There's a few things you can think about to get over that. The first thing, the setup of the throw. So like I mentioned, when I was in high school, even my first couple years in college, I would struggle losing some throws down the middle. The first thing you should do is set up the throw correctly. So enter from the back of the ring, and then you want to beeline right down the middle of the sector. Even find something to look at, maybe on, you know, the other side of the track or the facility that you're at. Right now we got a tree dead center, so I'm locking in on that tree, staying locked in, and I'm visualizing lining up that throw perfectly down the middle. I got that image burned into my head and it's still there. I'm thinking center. And then when I get set, I'm thinking center, come around, catch that point again as I come around the back, come in, and then just have some patience on the finish. And that's what you need. It's all about patience. So when you get to the front then, we need to think, work the legs, and then be patient, pull that left around and block it, like we talked about, stop the movement, and then close that right side, slam the door, so to speak, all the way around, right? So that's how you want to think about it on a full throw. Also, the stand throws can be a great tool to easily line up a throw down the middle, because again, the shorter the movement pattern, the easier it is to make the change. So when you're taking your stand throws, guys, I just want you to think, take a bunch of easy stand throws with the only focus lining it up down the middle. We're not trying to throw them far. You're just taking an easy stand throw and trying to line it up down the middle. So I'll demonstrate one here. This won't go far, but it will hopefully be lined up down the middle. Let's take one here. So there, pretty well dead center. I wasn't trying to throw it hard, but I did achieve my objective of timing the finish correctly. And that's what you need to do if you're losing the discus down the right side. So the next mistake that I see being made in the discus is diving into the ring. And I'm gonna demonstrate what that looks like. So a lot of throwers will come in, and then as they cut into the middle, they're dipping with this left side, and their upper body is kind of folding forward. So they're almost falling into the ring. And then the problem with this is you land in the front of the ring very off balance. Now, it can be a common impulse because like out the back, you might get excited and want to go really fast. And a lot of times when we go really fast, we also dip into the ring, right? Because we think that's going to make us faster, but in actuality, it just puts us off balance. And then if you get to the front and you're off balance, you're not going to be able to apply nearly as much force into the implement. So I'm going to show you a super easy drill that you can do to fix that. Because, well, I'll show you in a perfect world what we want it to look like is you come out the back and then we stay level all the way throughout. So you'll need a prop, a broomstick. I'm using a hockey stick today. Anything similar will work. And we're gonna have our arms out a little wider for the discus. And then we're just gonna go through a rotation with this stick on our back. And then you can even pause in the wheel or the half turn and then finish the throw. And what you're gonna find is having the stick on your back forces you into a level position. You can dip with it, but it's a lot harder, right? It's kind of exaggerated. So you just kind of go through, and if you do enough reps with the stick on your back, it will train you to stay level out the back. And then you're going to be on balance more in the front, which will allow you to apply more force to the implement, which will result in farther throws. So the next mistake I see being made in the discus is not generating enough separation. So remember, we talked about separation through our full throws. Very simply, it's distance between the implement and the right hip, right? So we want to get the right hip in front of the discus as far as we can to create stretch that helps us throw farther. I commonly will see throwers and they'll come and they'll almost work with the discus and the right hip as one unit, right? Like they'll almost be in line with each other. And then they get to the front, they land pretty open, and there's literally no stretch across their chest or across their hip to help them get some more distance. So it's a pretty easy fix. We want to think about establishing separation as early on in the throw as we can. So when I'm throwing out the back, one of the first cues I'm thinking about is I want to get the hip as far in front of the discus as I can to feel stretch all the way from my forearm, my bicep, across my chest. And then I want to maintain that stretch. Again, I'm feeling it here. Maintain, into the front, into the stand throw. And then once my left foot hits the ground, then I can start to unwind that stretch and put it into the implement. So if you're not generating enough separation, the first thing you should think about out the back of the ring is, can I hold the discus back, feel some stretch, and work the hip in front of the implement? So then I have some stretch reflex that will help me throw a lot farther when I get to the front of the ring. So we've gone through all the mechanics of the throw. We've talked about common mistakes and corrections you can make to improve your technique. I want to take a minute to talk about how you should be structuring your practice on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, and even as far as like a full season goes. So if you're primarily a discus thrower, like that's your only event, maybe you throw a little bit of shot, but you're primarily focused on the discus, you want to get into the ring at least 3 days per week, ideally 4 days per week, because what you're going to find is discus requires a fair bit more practice time than shot put. It's more of a finesse event. Even you saw on some of these throws, I've been throwing a long time, but I'm still kind of working to improve the finesse and the flight of the discus, because it does require a long time to master the craft. So if you're, maybe more of a shot put dominant athlete, but you throw a little discus on the side, like a dual sport athlete or a dual event athlete, then you want to get into the discus circle at least twice per week, ideally 3 times. When I was in college, shot put was, slightly my better event, but I would get into the discus at least 2 times per week. So that's frequency, depending on what event you're focusing on. When you're actually in the circle, volume of throws will vary athlete to athlete. I would usually take, not a whole lot of volume. I was always more focused on quality over quantity. I had more teammates who did prefer to take more throws. So it will take some experimentation to figure out, okay, what's your sweet spot as far as number of throws? But as a general rule, we want to come in and we want to do 6 to 8 easy stand throws, just warming things up. Then we want to do 4 to 6 half turns, maybe even 6 to 8, you know, if you're getting some good benefit out of them. We want to come in, take maybe 4 walkthroughs, and then we do want to take some non-reverses. We'll want to take, again, 6 to 8 non-reverse throws. Again, gradually increasing the effort and ideally the distance as we go through. And then 15 to 20 full reverse throws. That is how you should conduct a session. So again, the volume is generally about 25 to 30% higher than it would be in rotational shot put. Again, because discus requires more reps to master, but also it's quite a bit easier on the body than shot put. Shot put's a big, heavy implement, and it can really cause some, you know, injuries to your hand, shoulder, bicep, pec if you overthrow the shot put. But discus, it's lighter. It's maybe a little bit more of a natural movement because we're not consistently hitting this pressing movement. So it's something where you can sustain some more reps. As far as a full season goes, when you're in the off season, you want to be focusing on a lot more drill work, right? Drills to correct maybe some of the technical deficiencies that you had during the season. So we want a lot of stand throws, a lot of half turns, a lot of, you know, throws. You can get like a discus ball and you can just throw it into a net. That can be really helpful to do. And then as we get closer to the season, you want to have more of a focus on the full throw, and you want to have more of a quality over quantity focus, because when you're in season, you don't want to take 60 throws a session because you're going to wind up very tired out and you're not going to be able to perform at the meet the way you want to. So we need to go in and find a way, how can we get 20, maybe at max 30 quality throws in to make sure we're prepared for the meet, but also to not overtrain our bodies. So again, it's some trial and error. Go out, try some different things, figure out what works for you, but these are some good foundational principles to set up your discus practice schedule. So that is a wrap on our discus video masterclass, guys. I truly hope this has been a helpful resource for you. If you're not already working with me, you can find out some more about my coaching program, collegethrowersacademy.com. You can also reach out to me through Instagram. It's just at Coach Joe Maxwell or at College Throwers Academy. Again, I want you to remember that discus is not something that you're going to master overnight. It is something that takes years, sometimes decades to master. But if you have a consistent plan and a coach who knows what they're doing to lay out a good schedule for you, and you show up to work every single day at practice trying to get just 1% better, after a couple years of doing that, you'll be amazed at how far you're able to go in the sport. So keep working hard, and I'll see you in the circle.